don't think this jacket goes with these pants.
No, I think it's great.
I should have, I didn't plan that well. And the cameras are rolling. Welcome to Chatting with Janine. I'm your host, Janine Nodder, and this week I have a fun guest. Her name is Helen DePrima. She's 80 years old, and she's here to chat with us about why it's never too late to write a book. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right.
I got my jacket all wrong with my pants, but as long as I get the title of the show right, it's never too late to write a book.
Right. Actually, I started writing when I was 69. I finished my first novel.
Oh, good for you.
And since then I've written 5 more, so I have 6 completed since I was 69.
Wow.
And something I wanted to do all my life, and kind of life's activities got in the way. And then in 1996, my aunt who raised me went into a serious decline down home in Kentucky, so I got in my truck and went down there and didn't come home for 8 months, caring for her in the old family home. And when I got back after her death, I thought it would be fun, just for my personal use, to write a memoir of going back to your childhood home, but this time in the role of a parent, and reconnecting with all my cousins down there, and clearing out the attic and the memories and distributing the goodies. And my memoir was an absolute disaster. It went nowhere. So instead I turned it into my first novel. And I'm pretty happy with that. I gave the protagonist to my aunts, all the adventures that my aunt could have enjoyed, that she gave up to raise me. So I put her on the road. It's called The High Road Home, and takes place in Kentucky and Colorado, and that was my first novel.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, good for you. No, my father was raised by his aunt. Oh.
Yeah, extended family. My family's been in the Louisville area since 1865.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the name Charles E. Shelton?
No, I'm not. That's not one of my
Kentucky colonel,
connections.
and there is, he more recently, I don't know how long you've been in New Hampshire, but there's a big monument to him. Ah. He was he's the last officially listed POW from the Vietnam War.
Ah.
But that doesn't mean that he was the only POW. Mm-hmm. It was, in 1985, they had status review hearings down at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas, and they went through the list and just presumed dead. He was the last name on the list, and they kept his file alive. So, I mean, if I'm ever going to write a book, it'll be about that.
Yes,
yeah,
yes. I mean,
I do know a lot
all
about
the connections, the people waiting, the people not knowing, the people wondering. You know, once you turn your mind loose on a situation, it's fascinating. It's fun. It's scary sometimes. Sometimes I have my characters take off cross country with me in pursuit. I had no plans for what they said, and opens a whole new area of inquiry, of a plot line. And so, yeah, that would be a wonderful topic to write a book about. No, my family were old German settlers. My mother's family was old German settlers east of Louisville. And believe it or not, that area used to be the potato capital of the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And before...
Not the Idaho potato.
No, because this was settled much earlier, and they shipped, train loads all over the country, especially during World War I, because of the demand for, rations for the troops and like that. So my family, the little town that's now a suburb of Louisville called St. Matthews, was once my great-grandfather's farm.
Wow. And
there's a very little park there. It says Holzheimer Park. So, we're proud of... I've lived here since 1973, but I'm down home is still Kentucky.
So some people say if you're going to write, just write what you know. Right. Is that your advice too?
It's a good place to start.
It's like every single person you meet has a story to tell.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a friend from high school, and he was telling me his story. You know, he was down on his luck and everything he went through. I said, Omar, you should write this down. That would be a very interesting book.
Yeah, and you can start at that point, but like me, trying to write it as a personal experience, it just wasn't working for me. But I used a lot of the basis for that in both, actually in the first novel, and also then I got seduced into writing romance for 3 books.
I'm an avid reader, but that's not what I read.
Well, I know, but I don't consider them. I just consider them good stories. But my agent was happy; she deserved her 15%, and the money was good. The checks don't bounce. And but then after I finished that contract, I went back to what I wanted to do, which is I love mysteries. And my last 2 books have been murder mysteries set in the Louisville area, and I incorporated a lot of my personal family history in that. The first book was called Cave Creek, and that's the name of an equine rescue facility, fictitious. But my grandfather was indeed a horse trader and a horse doctor, not a veterinarian, but self-taught horse doctor. And so I worked that whole experience of mine. He bought horses and mules and sold them, and my cousins and I rode them and broke them, and so that was the basis of that.
One of an author that I had on the show in the past, her name is also local. Her name is Michaeline Della Fera, and she writes mysteries too.
Ah, cool. Yeah, that's the and I went, and on that I then went indie. Independent publishing, self-publishing.
Oh, okay. So who published your first books?
That one also, I had an agent. I had a very nice agent, and she submitted the heck out of it, and just couldn't. Says it wasn't quite a romance, and it wasn't quite a. She says, why don't you go ahead and self-publish, and then do something else. So the 3 that I sold, that she sold for me for a very nice advance for an unknown author, are about bull riding. I'm a big bull riding fan.
Really?
Oh
wow.
Yeah, and I've traveled all over the country.
Ole!
No. Bull riding. The bull always wins in bull riding.
I think of the Red Cave.
No.
Toro.
The crazy cowboys that get on these monster animals have to hang on for 8 seconds, and but the characters, the people involved in that are just fantastic, interesting, various backgrounds.
You don't see a lot of that up here in New England.
Actually, they come to Manchester every year.
Really?
Yep, the top of the A team comes here, and
I've been here all this time, and
oh no, they've been coming to Manchester for the last 4 or 5 years, and 2 nights at the whatever it is, the Schnoo Center.
I know. I was trying to think too. I'm like, the Pringle. What is that car that we call it? The Pringle.
Well, whatever it is now, that's where they. And it's a wonderful. It's an insane sport. There's absolutely no use, but undoubtedly some drunken cowboy said, "Bet you I can do."
Yeah. Hold my beer.
Yeah, exactly. But it's they're incredible characters involved, and I've used that as the basis, not the story, but a family in Colorado whose father and the 2 sons are involved in bull riding, and so that's the backdrop for the stories. And you said write what you know. One of the part that I like best is research. I am a fanatical researcher.
My mother loved that too.
And so one of them has to do with spinal injury, and rehabilitation. One of them has to do with adoption policies in Tennessee. Um, and I call people up, and people are so nice. They like to share their expertise, and
where do you go for your research? Or is it all online?
I start online, but then I get on the phone. And about the spinal injury, there's a fairly new device that takes the place of the huge old exoskeletons that is computerized. It's like a computerized brace and for paraplegics. And there's a lady hiking the Appalachian Trail with those. So I called her up and talked to her. And she was very nice, and she was real excited about sharing this information. And you meet such cool people doing research.
I used to be a freelance writer. I'd write feature articles. And back when I started this show in 2006, one of the early shows, there was twice where I needed to do some research. And I went to the main library in Manchester and looked through old films, both from 1973. That's the year you moved here?
Yeah.
Okay, 1973, there were two major things that happened that I researched, and I have copies of it. One was a murder, a homicide in Candia of two Merrimack girls. So I went back and I was looking for the articles about when that happened. And just the ads from the paper.
I know, isn't that
like
fascinating?
Dungarees. I'm like, who wears dungarees? And the other one was, again, a POW issue, prisoner of war. There was an exclusive story in the New Hampshire Sunday News, a mother who went to Laos to find her son, who was missing in action or a prisoner of war, and she found him. She was able to see him. She talked to him.
He was alive.
Plenty of them were alive. Trust me,
yeah,
this goes back.
I'm aware of that, yeah.
I have tons of files on this topic. But he was so ashamed to have her see him in that. He said, just go home and forget about me. And I still have that article. I saved it.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I mean, just the lead up, the climax, the after story, I can see how it would have all kinds of implications. And sometimes the research is it can be very scary. My most recent book has a lot to do with traumatic brain injury. So I did
TBI.
Yeah, and I did a lot of course it was a crime thing, and tied in with a murder and all that. But
Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote.
Mine is a little harder core than I got a wonderful review from Kirkus on that book, odds that said this is the best kind of hard-boiled crime story. I thought, whoa, I mean, that's Kirkus has been around since 1933 reviewing books, and so I was very pleased with that. But I did all kinds of research. A lot of the action takes place at the University of Louisville Medical Center, and so I had all this information. And then my half-brother's half-brother.
I had to just
third marriage. Anyhow, wonderful guy. Contracted bacterial meningitis.
Oof.
And was in and out of a coma for like weeks and everything. And so my brother was writing to me, well, they put him into a coma. They used a trach. He was asking me all kinds of questions, and because I had just done this research, I was able to clarify a lot of the questions, or simplify a lot of the questions that he was asking me. Sometimes it's kind of scary. One of my books involves a flash flood in Colorado. Those three books take place in the Four Corners country, southwest Colorado. And I wrote an episode about a flash flood in which 5 people died, and the next week 5 people died in a flash flood there. I felt like I had caused it.
Oh no! Wow. The Johnstown flood.
Yeah.
Was that David McCullough? I've read everything he's written.
Huh.
Love him.
So, you know, sometimes having the information almost makes you feel it's a little bit spooky. But I love the research. I love talking to people, and you know, and people say, "Oh, I didn't know that," and then we get in another conversation.
You didn't start writing till you were 69 years old.
Yeah.
When in your younger days, did you ever think that you would be an author?
I wanted to. My grandmother and my aunt raised me, and my grandmother was a voracious reader, and she read to me. The first book she ever read to me was The Adventures of Robin Hood. This is not, you know, kids' literature, but and she taught all of us cousins to read before we ever went to school.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for her.
So I always wanted to. I wrote poetry in high school, and I was on the newspaper, and I was in the literary magazine and that. But I just never did anything with it. I was very busy, you know, went to nursing school, worked as a visiting nurse in the Colorado mountains. Then we moved to New Hampshire, and my husband's a vet, and so I did wildlife rehabilitation for 25 years, associated with his practice.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my dog, she cut her paw.
Yeah.
What do? I tried to put Neosporin on it, but she licked it off.
Yeah, it depends on the severity of it, but if it's a real cut, either that or you could put a little booty on.
Oh, she'll just say, she's a great big dog. She's not going to leave a booty.
Yeah,
We were
that's
talking about this
probably
morning,
true.
but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do.
It might need sutures, or it might be
It's not bleeding. But she's obviously it hurts her.
Yeah, and if she starts, if she continues to lick it, it could turn into something a lot worse.
Okay, so I should call the vet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to have about 10 minutes left. So before I run out of time, I wanted to tell you about this woman that I met who was 75 years old. She started running when she was 70.
Oh, bless her heart.
So she ran her first marathon the same year that, in the same race that I ran, my first marathon. And so the beginning of the race, we kind of kept time. So I remember looking up, you know, her to see how she made it. But she started running at age 70. And then ran her first marathon at 75.
I bow to her. I don't mind getting old, but I do mind getting unable. And in 2019, I was hiking 5 miles a day. I was building trails through the woods. I was building stone walls out behind the house. And then first my hip went out, then my back got, and it just like, everything, all the wheels started falling off at once.
That happens.
I do miss that physical activity. I sailed until I was 60 and had to give that up because of a vertigo problem. But I didn't start sailing until I was 50. Always wanted to learn to sail, had a lovely little boat built for me in Nova Scotia, but then I had to quit. You know, enjoyed the heck out of it for 10 years.
But you're still busy. You're still you're writing books.
Well, you know, now I give my characters the activities and adventures that I can't do anymore.
Oh, there you go. So you're still doing them vicariously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's and I write anywhere. I've completed scenes in MRIs.
Do you like carry a notebook and write things down?
I
notepad or
no.
are you on your little phone?
No, although my laptop is grafted to me. I know I would never go anywhere without my laptop. I mean, I would have been earlier this morning, only I was in the middle of a scene and I just didn't want to forget. But you know, once I finished a scene in the recovery room after surgery, I bummed some paper towels and a pen from the nurse. And
you started writing on the paper towels?
Yeah.
So you can write anywhere. You don't have to have a quiet little secluded cabin in the woods with nobody around.
Just Stephen King notwithstanding, with his lovely little Erie that he creates for his writing, that would be nice, but I like the flexibility of being able to tune out the world. I can write anywhere. Yesterday my husband had a long dental appointment and I got a whole chapter done while I was waiting for him.
Wow. I used to run marathons, and well, I just mentioned that, but I would time things by how many miles. Like, so somebody was working on a fence, and when I got back, I said, "That's 13 miles of fence you just got in there."
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can time it by appointments.
Yeah, truly. But anybody who's had a dream to do anything, I mean, as long as it's physically feasible. But I hate it when people say, "I've always wanted to write a book." Well, damn it, do it. Because it is possible. And everybody's got... Oh, let me put a plug in, not for me, but one of the most wonderful organizations is the New Hampshire Writers Project. And I started with them, and they've been so...
New Hampshire Writers Project.
Yeah, it's been around, I think, close to 30 years now. And it's very supportive. Children's books, journalism, memoir, novels, any kind of writing. They have programs and speakers and support groups and that. There's a big yearly Writers' Day in June where they'll have the playwright on Golden Pond is going to be the keynote speaker.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a wonderful organization. Anybody who's ever thought they want to write can find a niche.
Do you know anybody who, or maybe this has happened to you, or you're writing something and you go on, do you recommend just keep going or go back and then it's like, oh, and then you rewrite it, you end up having something entirely different? Yeah.
Both.
Both?
Both. And I think I picked this, Stephen King's, I don't like his books. I mean, it's not my genre. But
I like it. His older books, and then now it's just all smut, and I'm like, I don't want to read this.
Well, I don't like the supernatural. I'm very reality oriented. But his book On Writing is my Bible, and I reread that every once in a while just to...
Stephen King has a book on writing.
That's what it's called, On Writing. And
I like spooky stuff sometimes.
yeah, well, it's a very big market.
Yeah, I like a lot of wide variety, a lot of history. I read a lot of history.
But what I do is I write, and then when I sit down again, I go back to where I stopped and rewrite a little bit, so I'm making, leapfrog writing, but I don't write through the whole thing. I revise as I go along.
I also like once in a while to read a novel that has twists at the end,
Oh, yeah.
mysteries, and there's twists at the end, and I'm like, so I just read one, because those they're fast to read. I can read them in a day, if it's a fast reading story. And there was the one I just finished, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I was thinking about it. I said, her twist doesn't make sense.
I hate that.
It's like, no, this person had this situation, and that can't be right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I do is when I start a book, I start a character log. And I say, everything, even from the little boy who comes up to the character in the restaurant, and his name is Bobby, and I write down Bobby in restaurant so I don't use the same name further along. If I have a cowboy come in on a bay horse, I make sure he doesn't leave on a roan. Just the details. Mystery writers are fanatical. They're so picky.
Do you have favorite authors?
Yeah. Earlene Fowler is one of my favorites. She wrote a whole mystery, including an Agatha-winning novel about a folklore curator, museum curator, who is married to the local police chief out in California. And I love her books. Julia Spencer Fleming, she's up in Maine, and she writes a series about the Adirondacks. And Craig Johnson, the Longmire series. I don't know if you read saw the TV show.
My husband watched that.
Oh, well, the books are wonderful, and very gracious gentleman. I don't bother him, but I'll write to him every once in a while. We're Facebook friends, and I'll say, just got this wonderful review, and so he's a wonderful writer. And Tony Hillerman about the Navajo police mysteries. I guess Maine, and then the Bennett's Island series in Maine. Elizabeth Ogilvie She started in the late 30s and was writing up until her last book. She was in her 80s when she finished the series.
Oh, good for her. Well,
Yeah.
I've already mentioned David McCullough, but Jeff Shara is one of my favorites. I read everything that he puts out, too.
I'll have to look those up. I'm not familiar with those.
He's historical fiction. So Killer Angels, his father, Michael Shara, wrote
Okay.
that one. And maybe he finished it. Maybe Jeff Shara finished it. It's been a while, but back when I had a radio show, I got to have Jeff Shara on.
Oh, what fun.
And I was going to have him come out to do a fundraiser for the Gold Star Mothers Memorial Association. And we were very excited about it, but everywhere I went, I mentioned Jeff Shara, and people were saying, who? They'd never heard of him. And I'm like, I can't bring him all the way out here, and nobody knows who he is.
Yeah.
So I ended up not doing it, which is a shame. But I
Yeah.
wish more people would read Jeff Shara so he can come to New Hampshire.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds good. There's a good plug.
Yes. And I look forward to looking up your books too. Maybe not the romance novels so much, but the mysteries and the bull riding.
Yeah. Well, actually, the three Harlequin Heartwarming, those are the ones about bull riding.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, never mind then.
But I don't consider them. They're not. No bodices are ripped. No
Okay.
chests are bared.
Okay, maybe I will read them then. Thank you.
But I love them all. I feel like they're all good, strong books. But I didn't like the. I like having control over my work, and also the timeline for traditional publishing is like watching elephants gestate. It takes a long time, and this way I write it. I've got a wonderful formatter down in Massachusetts who makes it all work together. I found a cover designer in Australia, and you know, I have total control over the title, the cover art, and I can have a book out in pretty close as soon as I get it written.
Wow. Well, you have a fascinating life, and I wish you all the best, and I hope you have many more novels to come.
Well, I certainly have. I have a backlog I'm already thinking about.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for watching, and I hope you get out your pen and pencil or your little phone, whatever you want to use, and write something down. Make it a book.